the doctor went in another room, came out with a medical kit, and he said to me, well, if we were in Germany, this is what they would give your son immediately. And he placed some pellets on my son's tongue. I had no idea what he was doing. And he might have mentioned the word homeopathy, not so sure. But he told me to sit down. He said, here, mommy, hold your baby, or something like that. And I actually thought he was giving me David to hold so he could pass away in my arms.
Oh,
Oh
And
my.
I remember just saying to myself, I will love you no matter how, like, your brain is affected by this. I will love you no matter how your brain is affected by this. Like, please, God, just let me have him. Just let him live through this. Just let him live through this. And 5 minutes later, he sat up and he smiled at me. And I was shocked.
Welcome to the Simple Homeopathy Podcast. Your hosts are Sandra Nardoni, Nicole Pavlik, and Heather Strickland, three practical homeopaths whose mission is to educate, empower, and encourage you to confidently use the practical homeopathy approach to take back your health. Homeopathy is a system of natural medicine discovered in the 1700s by Dr. Samuel Hahnemann and is not supplements, botanicals, or herbalism. If you'd like to learn more, brew a cup of tea or coffee and keep listening. And remember, we're not doctors, so everything on this podcast should be considered educational only. Hello, and welcome to the Simple Homeopathy Podcast. My name is Sandra Nardoni, and I'm here with my regular friends, Heather and Nicole. But we also have a very special guest today with us, Dr. Lauri Grossman. And we cannot wait to talk to her today. But before we get started, two things. First of all, a disclaimer. We are not doctors, so whatever we talk about today is to be considered educational. And if you have an emergency, please call 911. Okay, so we want to get that over with. And then I'm going to just go ahead and give you all a really great introduction of our friend Dr. Laurie. She is a chiropractor as well as past president of the board of directors and chair of the advisory council of the National Center for Homeopathy. We are big fans, where she traveled the globe meeting leaders of conventional, integrative, and homeopathic medical institutions, creating partnerships to advance the use and effectiveness of homeopathy in all disciplines of medical practice. Dr. Grossman has a private practice based in East Hampton and New York City, where she's taught in hospitals, including Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and the Hospital for Special Surgeries, and NYU. So we are thrilled to be able to have this conversation with somebody that honestly we're like kind of big fans of. So anyway, we're going to get started here today, and I'm going to punt this over to Nicole, who's going to start our conversation. We really only have three easy questions for you today, and we are just going to pretty much let you talk and tell us your story, and we're excited to get started. So Nicole, are you ready to ask the first question?
I am. And so, Dr. Laurie, first of all, thank you so much for being here with us. We are so excited to have you. We met you actually in Florida just this past fall. And we had such a wonderful conversation with you, and we just felt like we were like, oh my gosh, we need to have her on our podcast. Our listeners need to hear your story. So we're looking very much to hearing some of the things that we have heard, but some of the things that maybe we have not heard from you before. So I want to kind of dive in where we started with you back in Florida, which was your journey and how you started with homeopathy. Your story and how you found homeopathy was so touching to all of us. So we really wanted to we hoped that you would share that with our listeners today.
Well, I'll be happy to. But before we take Sandra's punt to you, Nicole, I just want to say people weren't there in Florida with us, so they didn't know how moved I was to meet the three of you. So it
Oh,
wasn't just a one-way street. You were infinitely warm and gracious, and your practical homeopathy gathering was a beautiful, beautiful gathering. I was thrilled to be there. Very, very happy to meet you and your fellow colleagues and students and teachers. I was so moved by it. So I was delighted by your invitation to join you. Okay.
that's
That
awesome.
you.
said, so now back to my journey. Um, Remember, I'm a lot older than you folks. So I grew up in the 50s. Probably your grandparents grew up in the 50s, but when I was going to school later on in the 60s, it was really the time throughout the entire country that people were exploring different forms of what later became called integrative medicine. You know, I was studying plants that Native American Indians used. I was looking into how different cultures had studied iridology and color therapies and sound healing. And that wasn't me. That was the times I was growing up in and learning. And I was very moved by that. And if something came new down the pike, I studied it. And I didn't have a preference. And so, Reiki was growing and hands-on healing and everything. And I just loved it all. I was very passionate about it. And this was not part of my I was at Cornell University. It was not a part of my education. That was kind of separate from it. And when I had my children at a very young age, when my 6-month-old spiked a very high fever, I called our pediatrician, who I knew was open to natural methods, but there was no name for it. He was really a pediatrician. He was a physician. There's nothing on his credentials that, would say he was a homeopath or anything like that. Anyway, so I laid my son down to take a nap, and he slept for a long time, longer than usual. And as any mom knows, you want to go, woohoo, it was very exciting that he was sleeping long. Maybe I could take a shower and wash my whole body, or maybe I could go into the kitchen and like clean it up the way I really wanted to. But what happened was the nap became kind of like eerily long. Like I just started to get a little nervous. So I laid over I kind of put my head over his crib, and I don't know, something just wasn't right. I don't know why, whatever. And then I put my cheek or my lips on his head, and he was on fire. And I picked him up, and he just like draped himself over my shoulder like a rag doll. I was terrified. So I called the doctor, and he said to me, well, what's the fever? And I didn't think to even take the fever. So I took his fever, and it was 105.6. I had zero medical training at that time. In my brain, I thought, oh, this must mean that he's going to have some sort of brain damage from this. And I really believe that. He said, bring him right in. I brought him right in. And without really knowing what was the cause of the fever, without a big workup, whatever it is, the doctor went in another room, came out with a medical kit, and he said to me, well, if we were in Germany, this is what they would give your son immediately. And he placed some pellets on my son's tongue. I had no idea what he was doing. And he might have mentioned the word homeopathy, not so sure. But he told me to sit down. He said, here, mommy, hold your baby, or something like that. And I actually thought he was giving me David to hold so he could pass away in my arms.
Oh,
Oh
And
my.
I remember just saying to myself, I will love you no matter how like your brain is affected by this. I will love you no matter how your brain is affected by this. Like, please, God, just let me have him. Just let him live through this. Just let him live through this. And 5 minutes later, he sat up and he smiled at me. And I was shocked. Shocked. And the doctor says to me, after a little bit of time, I don't remember if he examined him again or what, he said, okay, you can go home. And it's like, what? And as any mom would, you find out your kid's okay. Terrific, I'm out of here. And I
Okay.
had been at my mom's house, if I recall correctly, this is almost 50 years ago. And my mom's saying to me, like, what happened? And I said, he's okay. And it's like, are you kidding me? He's okay. And it's like, yeah, he's okay. And I was in New York City the next day, and on a lamppost, there was a flyer flapping and flapping and flapping. And on it, it said class in homeopathic medicine. And I said, holy moly, that's the stuff. Mind you, I really did not know what homeopathy was. That's the stuff they used on David. Call my mother up. You've got to watch the baby. You've got to watch the baby. I've got to go to this class. And they were showing videos of cases of people using homeopathy. And one was someone with colitis or asthma or everything you could think of. And things that I had heard, I knew of, but I knew that they were kind of like treated with conventional medicine or managed with conventional medicine. I knew they didn't like go away. But video after video, you see this very sickly looking child suddenly with color and animated, or you see this older gentleman who kind of looked feeble and whatever kind of looked a little bit more robust. And I was amazed. So now, mind you, I do remember the three things that affected me the most. And I know the first one was just that it was effective. Like all these people who had been so sickly. And I think almost every incident we saw was someone with a chronic illness. I don't think anybody was acute. So it was all chronic. And so each person just got better. And it wasn't just one case or two. And they were very diverse problems. And the other thing, and I'll say this till my last day, it was done so gently. There was not a lot of poking and stabbing and tests and painful rigmarole that anyone had to go through. And then the other thing that was obvious was everybody's like whole body responded. Now, no one was speaking homeopathic philosophy. They weren't saying homeopathy heals the whole body. I saw it with my eyes. No one was telling me homeopathy is gentle and effective. I just saw that. After the class, I go up. Oh, so when you say what drew me, that was the moment I was drawn. With my son, that was the moment I was amazed. But what drew me was that class. And then lastly, after that class, I said to the teacher who was speaking, where can I study this stuff? Now, mind you, way back then, there were zero homeopathy schools in the United States, zero. There was no computers, so there was no online education. So that's what started my journey to track down anybody who could teach me homeopathy. And that was a journey in and of itself. But that was the moment the journey started.
Oh my goodness,
That's
Dr. Laurie,
amazing.
that's it's like I've heard this from you in Florida. That's what drew me so much to you. And again, I'm like tearing up and just my heart feels so happy because we're just so grateful that we connected with you and that, our listeners get to share and witness a story that is so profound like that, because that's the way a lot of us come to it is it's just this. Like you said, it's not people spouting it. It's just what we're witnessing,
Right,
right? It's
right.
what we're seeing. It's what we're feeling in our hearts that we're seeing that this stuff actually works. And so I love not only that you saw that with your baby, but then also that that flyer flapping in the wind just left such an imprint on my mind that I couldn't wait for you to share that with everybody, because that's how homeopathy comes to a lot of us, right? It just kind of smacks us in the face like
Right.
that and says, see me, we need to be noticed. And I also love that you brought up about the class itself, that there were chronic conditions, because that's something that I think a lot of people with homeopathy don't realize.
Right.
Initially they go into it for the acute aspect, but they don't realize that they can actually heal from chronic conditions as well. And I think that's another thing that just makes homeopathy so amazing. So thank you so much for sharing all of those things. So I know you said that was your start of your journey. So once you started from there, were there any mentors or key influences that kind of approached your journey from there?
Well, from that spot, George Vithoulkas, who teaches in Greece, was a was my main mentor because I found his book in a used bookstore in New York City. Like I was still not finding people. It was, and don't forget, when I asked the instructor in that class, where can I study homeopathy? He said to me, well, there's schools all over the world, just not in the United States. So I
Mhm.
didn't even think to look for someone here.
Hmm. Yeah, it was
And
kind of the dark ages of homeopathy during that time here.
it was actually, I do credit George Vithoulkas with bringing homeopathy back to the US
Mhm.
because there were a small handful of medical doctors from the West Coast who I didn't know at this time, who had studied with him, and they started bringing homeopathy back at their school. It was called the Hahnemann Clinic in Berkeley, California. They graduated many really, really excellent physicians and nurses, et cetera, et cetera. And that was when homeopathy was inching up, inching up. And then, of course, the computer changed everything because
Mhm.
then you could study with people in other countries or at least find out about them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's amazing. So I'm gonna pass it off to Heather now. She's gonna ask you the next question, but before we pass it off to Heather, is there anything else that you wanted to share from your start that you can think of? Or do you want to go into Heather's question next?
Well, let me see what Heather asked.
All right, here we go.
If I don't like the question, I'll just say, you know what? Let's go back to my childhood.
I love it. I love it. It's perfect.
They are so flexible. Um, so I mean, when we chatted in Florida too, one of the things that I was personally amazed with was all of the things that you did, which is kind of playing off of Nicole's question still, like your whole like educational journey and how intensely you wanted to learn this. Like that was mind blowing to me. So it made me feel very blessed that we have access to something like Joette's school and classes and things right here. Like the furthest we had to travel was to our office, really, to be able to learn this. And like, so if you don't mind just sharing really briefly, like some of the things that you did as far as like getting your education, your homeopathic education, and then I will throw my other question in.
Well,
Just
it
because it
was
sounds such a dedication to me. Like
it
it was.
was it was so complicated. I was a single mom of two very little kids. I desperately wanted to learn this method of healing, and I couldn't find any place to go. And and I had my kids. So I went back to his pediatrician and I asked him, and he basically said to me, homeopathy is not easy to learn, if you dedicate yourself to homeopathy, you're really going to be a neglectful mother. And, and I didn't question his advice at all. I just said, okay, that's not going to work. And then eventually I found out about naturopathic schools. At the time, there were two. and it was only legal to practice naturopathy in 7 states, which did not include New York, which was my home state. So I said, well, I can't go there with 2 babies and study there with no help. Like, that one's not going to work. And then I'm going to tear up. I came up with this cockamamie plan, which at the time seemed like the best thing I could come up with. I thought, I'll go to chiropractic school because chiropractors will be open to this. And after chiropractic school, after I earn enough money, then I'll be able to travel, and my kids will be a bit older. So I'll be able to travel where I could study with homeopaths or whatever. So I went back to college for 4 years because I had to go part-time because I had babies to study physics, organic chemistry, whatever else I needed. Then I went to chiropractic school for 4 years. And then I worked for 2 years. And then I finally wound up in my first homeopathy class after 10 years
Wow.
of going back to school and peeking at what I could find that George Vithoulkas had written. And I remember I was in a class with Nancy Herrick, and Roger Marston's an MD. Nancy Herrick, she's a PA now, but she wasn't at the time. And they had started a school on the West Coast in Berkeley, California. And I remember Roger saying, this isn't going to be an easy voyage. There's a lot to learn here. And not everybody's going to make it. And I remember there were 46 of us. I remember turning to the doctor sitting next to me. And I said, if there is one person left at the end of this journey, it's going to be me.
I love that determination.
And
that's amazing.
And our graduating class was very tiny. And I think at this late stage in the game, I think maybe 3 of us are still practicing.
Wow.
But I do remember that when I graduated, Nancy Herrick turned to me and she said, as you're graduating, whatever, she said like one kind thing to each person. And she said, Laurie, I just love your enthusiasm. And my passion for homeopathy never wavered from that first day. There might have been times where I wanted to cry because I couldn't figure out a patient's remedy, but I never, ever, ever, I was wedded to homeopathy. I remember expressions rolling off my tongue like, if I had to live in a cardboard box in order to practice homeopathy, because my income was, not huge, especially at the beginning, I said I would be happy to do that so long as I could keep practicing homeopathy.
It is addictive. Once
Well,
you start watching
I'll
people
tell you
get
what.
better.
That's exactly, I mean, Sandra, you say it all.
Mhm.
If you've known anybody who's been struggling, and for me, I think the cases that really affected me the most deeply were people with real severe depression or people with real severe anxiety whose lives were crippled by it. And many of these cases I co-managed with their therapists. So I'm not saying homeopathy was the be all and end all. I co-managed with other people, but they themselves felt like their wheels were just always turning in the mud. And to see someone like that finally become the person they were meant to be, then I won't so much say I'm addicted to homeopathy. I've said I'm motivated by the joy it can bring people who've had such little joy in their life.
Absolutely.
I mean, I still think I'm Jewish, but at Christmas, I get lots of cards from people I saw 35 years ago, from their children saying, thank you for giving me my mom back.
Wow.
Are you going
What
to
a testimony.
and there's no greater reward. Like some people sell jewelry in a shop. I love that. I'm so glad you're selling the jewelry. You like your jewelry. But our profession, you get to share the experience of restoring someone's well-being. And it sounds so cliche, but when you take your initial case and you hear the sadness, you hear the struggle, you hear how they've tried, you
Yeah.
hear how upset that they are, that they know their depression is spilling over to their children and affecting their marriage. And then the person blossoms. There is no greater act on earth.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe there is. I haven't found it yet. Maybe other people have professions that bring them just as much joy, but um
That
that.
story definitely just fits right in with, like, that's one of the reasons that we called our business what it's called. Because Nicole had a student who, when we were asking them to like describe what homeopathy has done for them or for their family, she said it brings hope where there wasn't any.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she called it homeopathy, and we were like that. We were joking. We were like, we're gonna put that on a t-shirt one day, and who knew that we were like, you know what, we're gonna incorporate that into our name because I resonated with that so much. And Dr. Laurie, I think that's also why I felt so drawn and resonated with you when we met too, because I struggled myself with chronic illness, and so when I see other people, and I was a nurse, so I became a nurse before a homeopath, and I did it to help people heal, right? And then when I found that that system wasn't really doing that for most people, and they were left in this kind of a hopeless state, to be able to find something that can help people not only regain that hope, but get their life back, get their health restored. There's no other feeling. I mean, passion isn't even like, it's just, there's no other feeling that you could describe than there is to help people in that chronic situation. So just again, thank you for sharing that piece because it's beautiful.
So my actual question, which if you don't want to answer, we can keep going with this thread, but um, just looking at how homeopathy, like from where you're describing it to being, it was almost non-existent, right, in the United States at that time when you were starting out on it. And then kind of moving forward to kind of where we are now, where do you kind of see that greatest need for, whether it's education or awareness or practitioners? Like, where do you kind of see things, where's the greatest need, do you feel?
My answer is actually pretty simple, to be honest with you. Because we do have good teachers now. We do have good organizations now. We do have efficient ways to communicate, Zoom or whatever it is. We now, if you want to buy a homeopathic program that has like 100 fabulous homeopathic books in it, you could do that. So we have resources. Homeopathy Today magazine is a phenomenal magazine. It's put out by the National Center for Homeopathy. And if you become a member, you get it for free. So where is homeopathy going? I think that right now believe it or not, we're still a very, very tiny profession, very tiny, bigger than we used to be, but it's still teeny weeny. There's something like less than 2,000 certified health practitioners who know homeopathy. That's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. However, people don't turn away from a good thing. In other words, my doctor didn't say to me, wow, did you see how that fever just dropped in your son? You really should start using homeopathy.
Right.
No one had to tell me a thing. And therefore, I think the most important thing now is support and unity,
Mhm.
supporting each other, when you graduate, I know when I graduated from my first school, I wanted to, because I'm the person I am, I'm not saying everybody else has to live like me. I went to study with this person, graduated their program, went to study with that person, graduated that program, studied, because it was really my kind of, it was more so my lack of confidence, like feeling, oh, I need to know more and I need to know more. But despite the fact that I wrote many articles for the National Center for Homeopathy, and I taught, I can't even count how many webinars online. I trained hundreds of physicians in many different hospitals in the US and abroad. I worked with Homeopaths Without Borders for many years, treating people in emergency situations. However, all we need to do is learn to be the best homeopaths we can be. Each person has a different level. Some people are like photographic memories. They can learn every remedy in the world and use each little nuance. Good for them. Some people, they don't feel as intellectually strong. They want to focus on just a handful of remedies and use them with the people that can, like their neighbors, teach them how to use first aid kits, and that's it. That's good for them. I think everybody needs to be supported to be the best homeopath that they can be, and then work together so that everybody feels supported, whether or not you're an MD homeopath who went on for a doctorate and you're a member of the AIH, that's the Homeopathic Medical Doctors Organization, or if you're a nurse who did a half-year program in homeopathy and you're integrating homeopathy as home care because you can't use it in your hospital or whatever it is, or whatever level you're practicing homeopathy. I wish everybody could just support each other and work together.
We're all on the same team.
Yes.
And one, I mean, I think the thing that I loved the most was when I came to that weekend in Florida that you referred to. I felt so welcomed. And my background was completely different from any. First of all, my background is a crazy one. They don't even have a chiropractic homeopathic organization. So it's the only healthcare profession in the US that doesn't even have a homeopathic organization. And because I went to the West Coast and then I went to the East Coast and I went to the North Coast and the South Coast, I wound up studying with and learning from such a diversity of people. And I saw the brilliance of each person I worked with and each of my colleagues and then each of my students. And I saw that this person had this gift and that person had another gift. And we were not all meant to practice homeopathy in the same way. And we hurt the profession when we say this is the only way. We strengthen the profession when we say we can all work together to make this happen. So in terms of where's the profession now, yes, we are growing, but we are still tiny. We can help each other by supporting each other's profession. If you want to, the National Center for Homeopathy is really it's an outreach program for anybody interested in homeopathy. And we have a Find a Practitioner directory, and it doesn't matter which school you studied homeopathy in or what your licensure is, you can be in that directory.
I
If
love
you're,
that.
if you're a member. And so I think that if I had any effect on the profession, it would be maybe we be kinder to each other. May we embrace each other and allow each person to be an individual doing what they do best within the profession, but supporting each other. And people pick up on that. If they read an article that this homeopathic organization has attacked that homeopathic, a layperson is just not going to want to go near it. If you read an article that says the Nursing Association is working with the practical homeopath, it's like, wow, that's cool, you know? And so I think the more we can work together, the better off we are. If you're a nurse and you have a practical homeopathy background, maybe you want to just contact the Homeopathic Nurses Association. And if it's not for you, fine. You don't have to join, but at least get in touch with them. Just want you to know I live in Florida and I'm practicing down here. And if somebody doesn't welcome you, be gracious and then just let it go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that because I think that was the first thing I noticed about you was when I heard that you were there, I was like, huh, because I knew enough about the organization that you had been a part of to know that practical homeopathy is kind of new to the scene, and there's still probably people that would consider us to be a little bit controversial in that world. And your kindness and the way that you were, your curiosity. I always admire someone who I consider you to be a brilliant person based on what I know about you, but a brilliant person who also has humility and still has curiosity. To me, is that's the kind of person I want to learn from.
Right.
And I'm not, I know that the way that, Joette will say the way she does things is not the end all to everything. I mean, she talks all the time about people that she's learned from that are not practical homeopaths, or, they were very much from a different kind of background than her, but she praises them and brings out all the things that she learned from them. And there's not bashing going on.
Yeah.
And that I really admire that about her, and I admired that about you when I met you, because curiosity is something that I think all of us need to have in order to have that unity and support. You have to remain curious about what other people are doing, even when you don't agree with them.
Without a doubt, without a doubt.
And so I
have to give credit to Elaine and Arthur Grossman for this, because that's how they raised me. So
well, that's I have a my parents were very much like that as well. We were always taught to think about another person's perspective and not jump to conclusions, and all of those things are so important, and hopefully other people are raising their kids that way. But anyway, I love that. And actually, that kind of answers the question I was going to ask. So I think I'm going to pivot a little bit and ask you a question I thought of while you were talking, because I love that. And we'll probably circle back around at the end to that concept. But I also was wondering, because you have such a wide variety of people that you've learned from, and I'm sure a wide variety of cases that you've taken, can you think of a case that you've had that has stood out as remarkable in some way? And would you possibly even be willing to share, maybe not about that specific case, but about a remedy that has come up time and time again for you, that you just are like, this is an amazing remedy that covers so many things? I know that's kind of a broad question, but I figure you probably have some stuff in mind.
well, actually, you're asking me a really, really good question, because there's two threads to answering that question. One is, which remedies do we use a lot?
Mm-hmm.
And if someone didn't know much about homeopathy and they wanted to learn about homeopathy,
Right.
which would you tell them, which would you tell them if I could give a sample of 3 remedies to anybody to just have in their house,
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely give arnica,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody bumps and bruises, certainly if you have kids.
Yeah.
And any parent who sees their kids get better quicker, that's a parent's dream.
Right.
I would prefer you heal my children before you heal me.
Yeah.
So that's why I say arnica, bumps, bruises, little traumas can be kept from becoming big traumas if you have arnica around.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is terrified of using something they're putting in their mouth, arnica cream or gel.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's where you need to start with arnica cream or gel, because no one minds smearing stuff on. Just
Right.
remember to tell them not on an open wound.
Right.
Okay. Okay. And then you could give, if they don't want to take anything oral, you could tell calendula, if it's a kid who scrapes their knee, that's huge
Mhm.
with kids and things like that. They cut themselves, you can put a little, okay. So that's the first aid that I would start with. Perhaps it's because of my history. If anybody has children, I would recommend they have belladonna in the house.
Mm.
There's no remedy like belladonna when a kid spikes a super high fever. The average person is just giving children's Tylenol again and again and again because the fever dips and then it goes right back up. And then it dips and it goes even higher. It's kind of like people who go on crash diets. You lose the weight, you gain more. You lose the weight, you gain more. It's the same thing. So belladonna, and if you give belladonna to someone whose kid tends to spike high fevers, that person, that individual needs support because when you give belladonna once at night, it doesn't always do the trick right away. I think my son, it worked so well because he was only 6 months old. He was, he was such a little pure little baby at the time. Sometimes you need to repeat it and repeat it. And when you have a kid with a high fever, it is scary.
Mhm.
So make sure they have some form of support. Maybe a friend of theirs is a nurse who could say, okay, well, and certainly if a fever goes on for an over long period, you need to know the danger signs where, like, if the diaper is still is dry and they're not drinking, okay, they're not nursing or anything like that. Okay. So I'm going to start with arnica. I'm moving on to belladonna. And then I'm sad that I have to say this, but because of the times we live in, I do think that aconite is a really good remedy. Um, I was in New York City when the towers fell, and it was such a horrible event.
Oh.
Back then, it was such an oddball event. That's why we were so shaken. Now there's an assassination, there's a shooting, it's like it happens way too frequently.
Mhm.
And we as adults, some of us can process it okay. But little kids who are
Mhm.
if they're in a school during a shooting, if they're in a town when a hurricane blows apart everybody's house,
Mhm.
even when we think the child's over it, aconite can really help ground the child. They don't
Mhm.
feel like they're in danger anymore. They don't have a tendency to develop recurrent panic attacks. Whenever they hear a loud bang, is the hurricane coming again? Is the hurricane coming again?
Mhm.
When they go to school, an unknown person comes in, they're not panicking that there's gonna, like they can stay grounded, listen to their teachers or whatever it is. So I think that I wouldn't call them my favorite remedies, but I do think that the first aid remedies, arnica especially, is good to have in every house, especially if you have children. Belladonna in case a kid spikes a high fever, and aconite just for those
For shocks.
for shock. And it comes in a potpourri of form. Someone could get stuck in an elevator once, and that ever since they got stuck in the elevator, now they won't go in any elevator, they won't go in a subway, they won't go on a plane. All these people that have these shocking events. And the incredible thing is that aconite can work even if the incident happened 10 years ago. That to me is amazing.
That
Someone hears of homeopathy and how it really helped their sister. And they go, God, I wish I had that. Because when I was in my car accident in 88, I always have a fear of car accidents. And then you go, well, it can still help with that. And then they give it a go and they go, I can't believe it. I've suffered for 40 years and now it's finally gone. So
Yeah.
I would say those three remedies. I
Awesome.
can't remember the exact question, but I think,
oh,
Well, I was
can
asking if you had a remarkable case you had worked on as well that
okay.
stood out, and just because you have such a long tenure
Yeah.
of helping people with homeopathy. It's always interesting, and I think stories are what grounds homeopathy in people's minds. Your story at the beginning was incredible as to how you came into homeopathy. And I thought that it might be nice to kind of end with a story that maybe that just stands out in your mind of something that has happened that you that really just stuck out to you.
Can I answer that, or did I already answer it?
No, you
If you
can
don't
answer it.
mind,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, yes.
So I would say that it reflects back on something I said earlier, and that's, although I think arnica, aconite, belladonna can be used by every home, it's really the remedies that have real deep effects on chronic conditions that no one ever thought would get better. So I'm speaking to someone who has a child who had some real shocking experience, like being in a car accident
Mm-hmm.
or being in a movie theater at maybe too young an age and seeing a spooky movie that maybe wasn't appropriate at the time. And they're haunted by nightmares and things like that. And the parents and the family try so hard to hug the kid when they wake up in the middle of the night, and the kid is just terrified. And I think the people that I've helped through that with stramonium, I will remember that till my last breath. I mean, stramonium can help remove someone from someone who's been raped, someone who witnessed. Aconite is more kind of like if you've seen, if you've been in a hurricane, or, it almost more often there's natural disasters and things like that. Stramonium, it's always violence.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who's witnessed, so I said aconite in case someone witnessed was in a school where there was a gun shooting. Well, usually the people that need aconite were in the other room. They
Right.
heard it, they were terrified. They didn't see it. They didn't have the violent image. The kids who were in that room,
Mm-hmm.
the child who saw his best friend get shot,
Mm-hmm.
those people more often will need something like stramonium. It has a thread of violence in it, and to free someone from that, as I said, those cases, I think of those people frequently.
Mm.
Another remedy similar to that is Staphylococcus aureus, someone who's been abused, like someone with, a parent with alcoholism, or a violent parent, and or someone with a very abusive teacher even, someone who was cruel to them, and they're terrified of opening their mouth from, what's going to happen to them. So that's Staphylococcus aureus. My Orem cases I think of all the time. People who hold themselves to such high levels of perfection that when they drop just a teeny little bit, they don't even think they're worth it to live. It's one of our main remedies for suicidal tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a child who's been a straight A student, head of the captain of the football team, volunteers at church every single week and loves it. And then he gets a B+ on a test and he wants to kill himself.
Yeah.
And no matter all the therapy in the world will not change that kid's
Perspective.
yeah, I had a second grader come to me with chronic migraine headaches. I asked the mother when, we're getting all the details of the chronic migraine headaches. I said to the mother, do you have any idea when this started? She goes, yeah, right after he ran for president, let me repeat, of the second grade.
Oh my goodness.
So I said to the little boy, what happened when you became president? And he goes, don't remind me. So I
Oh,
said, okay, I'm not going to push, but I'd love for you to tell me what happened. And he didn't want to talk to me. That night, he said to his mother, you know what happened? I told all my friends that I was going to change the time on the playground. We got a half hour every day, that I was going to get them an hour on the playground. So I spoke to my teacher, and my teacher told me to speak to the principal. I spoke to the principal, and the principal said, that's a very noble thing you want to do, Johnny, except that's what it is. And he said he remembered walking back to his classroom thinking, how could I tell them? How could I tell them? I let everybody down. This kid's in second grade.
Oh my
Mind you,
goodness.
this child now is in his 40s and is one of the most successful businessmen I know, but that's besides the point. But his chronic headaches, which were debilitating, went away after Orem. And
Wow.
it's not for us to judge what people think they were put on earth to do. Some people might need Orem because they're in the Olympics, and instead of getting the gold medal, they were the favorite, they got a silver medal. Or they were really, really smart growing up, and the whole family thought they'd continue the legacy and go to Harvard. And guess what? They got into Princeton, but not Harvard. Firemen who saved people from a burning building. And guess what? One child didn't make it out after saving 9 people that he himself carried down the ladder himself. And he'll never forgive himself for that, not saving that child. Or a parent with a child with cancer who is doing everything. And then the child succumbs to cancer, and the mom can never forgive herself for not having made the right contact or found the right doctor or started the treatment earlier or whatever. So people who can't live with what they've done, they have such high standards, and it doesn't matter how many people say, you went to Memorial Sloan Kettering 500 times, you went to every alternative therapist in the world 7,000 times. They go, yeah, but I could have done more. And when you see Orem, it comes from gold. It's like people have this gold standard for themselves. It's that's when you say it was worth it to go back to school 4 years and then chiropractic school 4 years. And just to add a little side note, one remedy that I didn't use that often at the beginning of my practice 40, 45 years ago, whatever it was, but I'm shocked at how much I use now, is arsenicum. And I don't know why. Maybe it's just there's anxiety in the air. But especially in kids who see another child vomit in school or a relative gets sick, and then they become terrified of getting sick in front of other people. It's one of the remedies I'm using the most in my practice, and I have no idea why, but I bring it up now because it's now one of those remedies that helps. Like many of these kids don't want to go to school anymore, or and it's very difficult for the parent to get the child to do anything that go to Aunt Sally's house. No, I want to stay home. Just stay home with me, mommy. And the mom says, sweetheart, you'll sit next to me if you get sick, or if someone gets sick, I'll drive you home right away. And with the support of arsenicum, you can get the kid back on track, but without it, it's very difficult.
I think that just because of everything that's happened in the last 7 years in the United States, all over the world, with illness, it is. I think it's at the forefront of people's minds. Sickness in general,
Yeah, they're
and
afraid to get sick.
yeah, everybody's afraid of getting sick because it's been such a trauma. It's been a world trauma that we've all gone through. And it isn't an easy thing to get over something that is pretty much a collective experience.
Right. I
And
agree.
so I love that you bring up arsenicum, because I feel like I've been using that a lot in my practice lately too. And I've thought about, I wonder if it's because of everything we've all experienced in the last few years.
Definitely out there.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, well, I know, you've had a lot of experience in a lot of different ways, but you've also had a lot of involvement with the National Center for Homeopathy. And just wondered if you would leave us with a word of wisdom for all of the moms out there that are trying to care for their families. One of the things we talk about a lot is teaching people how to become the healers in their own homes. And we wondered if you would have a word of wisdom specifically for those of us who are navigating the care of our families, whether it be moms or dads or aunts and uncles. There's a lot of caregivers out there. You don't have to be a mom to be a caregiver. And I just wondered if you had a word of wisdom for them as we kind of wrap this up. And also, if there's just anything else you'd like to add to what you've already said. We've loved everything you've talked about. You've kept me on the edge of my seat, I know.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's actually, I think it's a great question to close on because it's one that's very dear to my heart. And that is to be kind to yourself.
Mm.
Learn what you can. Suggest remedies when you're able to.
Mm-hmm.
And have support around you. You were not put on this earth to have to work at the level of Albert Einstein. So if you are trying to help a family member and they're not responding, give a call to a colleague. Like, have someone who, you don't have to heal the entire universe.
Mm.
And I think as moms, as caregivers, we hold ourselves to that standard. Like, what is the remedy? What is the remedy? I can't believe they're still coughing. You know, and let me tell you that acute, simple ailments aren't always the easiest things to treat.
I don't think they are.
I use coughs as my example. Give me an allergy case over a cough any day. And so
Yes.
I do think, though, learn as much as you can, study what you can. Be kind to yourself, though. Really have someone you could turn to when you just don't know, when you don't understand the response. It's like, wow, I thought the cough was going to go away, but I didn't think suddenly they'd be, hawking up all this mucus. Like, I didn't expect that one. Like, is it going the right way or did I just make it worse? So I think it's good to have colleagues that you could write to. And I think it's good to have support. Support can be friends. It could be your colleagues that you studied with. It could be a teacher that you had. Every state has a state organization. Like, there's some areas of the country that have a lower population, like I think Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. It's one thing. Connect with your state organization. And guess what? If they didn't go to your school, you're strengthening their organization. So don't be shy, or well, be shy if you want, but realize you have something to offer. And you don't have to be a superstar on their board. You can just say, I'm from this state and I'd like to join this state organization. If they don't welcome you, let it go. Don't torture yourself. The National Center for Homeopathy allows anyone to be a member. So you can be a member, you can get the newsletter, you get all the newsletters, and you'll feel a part of something. And I think that's important for people to just know there's a place to call. The National Center, our info box, like info@homeopathycenter.org, is open all the time. You could say, I have a challenge here. Is there someone or is there something, or what would you suggest? Our website is filled with pages and pages that I worked on.
It's an amazing resource. I love your website.
Thank you. So you can use that, but more than anything else, and I underline it, be kind to yourself and to everyone around you.
Yes, very good.
I forgot that.
Well, thank you so much. We are just thrilled to have had this conversation with you. It's been a delight to talk with you as usual. And we've been very honored to have you on our podcast. So we appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead. If everybody's good, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Are we good?
Okay. Hang on just 1 second. One final closing thing. And that is that as I turn 70, as I walk away from my president role at the National Center for Homeopathy, I'm going to be taking more time with my family now. And so I did give you my social media contacts, but I'm probably going to be winding that down over the next few months or so. And so the best way to get in touch with me, if you want to get in touch with me, is just send me an email, Laurie@drlaurigrossman.com.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Yes,
Laurie, for being
thank
with
you.
us today. You've touched all of us in more ways that you can even imagine. So
Mhm.
just thank you again so much for joining us.
Yes. Awesome. Well, I want to encourage all of you to visit the National Center for Homeopathy website. Can you give us that website, Dr. Laurie?
It's easy. It's homeopathycenter.org.
Okay, I thought so, but I wanted to make sure that I was right.
You got it
I
right.
wasn't
You got it
looking
right.
at it. Awesome. So that's the website to go to if you want more information about so many things with homeopathy. Becoming a member is quite inexpensive, way less than it should be, in my opinion. And their magazine is amazing. Even my 2-year-old granddaughter flips through it when it comes. So I highly encourage you to check that out. And if you are looking for a community to be a part of, we do have a membership. You can go to simplehopeapathywellness.com/membership. And we hope to see all of you very soon. And thank you for joining us today, Dr. Laurie, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Be well, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Simple Hopeopathy podcast. Tune in next time for more education, empowerment, and encouragement as we discuss how you can take back your family's health with practical homeopathy. Please share and subscribe and leave us a review. And if you'd like to know more about the membership we discussed in this episode, you can go to simplehopeapathywellness.com/membership for more information. See you next time.